Forgiveness is really about your own inner healing. It's not about an outward action towards someone else. It's about your own healing. It's about you letting go your own emotional burdens. It's empowering yourself and helping you learn how to take responsibility for your own stuff. So now you can make different choices. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Eileen Borris, and I'd like to welcome you to Political Forgiveness, Voices of Peace, a podcast where forgiveness and political forgiveness intersect to create a better world. This is the last episode of Season 1, and it is a conversation with women from Feminenza and the Erasmus Plus project, A Resilient Life. Mary Noble, who has been a guest of mine in previous episodes, is the co-founder and CEO of Feminenza International, a global nonprofit organization focused on women's development, trauma healing, and education in forgiveness. This conversation explores a vital role that forgiveness plays in our daily lives and features a rich dialogue with participants from Kenya, Kosovo, Israel, and across Europe. This gathering is a part of Feminenza's long-standing commitment in healing, reconciliation, and resilience through forgiveness. Please join us for a very enriching conversation.
I first want to introduce Dr. Eileen Borris. She's a clinical and political psychologist and has worked in many areas of conflict around the world, such as in India, Africa, the Middle East. She's been developing programs with forgiveness and political forgiveness since 1995. And Eileen has spoken at the United Nations General Assembly in New York as a keynote speaker several times. She's published 2 highly acclaimed books. This is one of them. And that has a foreword by the Dalai Lama. She also has a newsletter. We'll speak about that later, that comes out monthly. So we're very thrilled to welcome Dr. Eileen Borris today.
You're just so beautiful in the way you've introduced me. I just feel so honored and humbled to be invited to speak to this wonderful group. You know, as you mentioned, I've had the opportunity to sit in on the classes, and I leave those classes filled with joy in my heart with what all of you are doing, because we need this work so much.
I am going to use this opportunity now, and I know Mary's not expecting this, but I feel it's the right thing to do, just to say I feel very grateful that Mary Noble's here with us as well in this conversation. She is the CEO of Feminenza, and Mary is the one who really pioneered the forgiveness work into the world, which I know many of us are grateful for, and she's done a lot around the world, uplifted many human lives and communities. So thank you, Mary, as well, for your work.
Thank you, Eileen.
So what do you do if you meet with people and they're not committed? They don't want to forgive. They don't want to change their grievances. They don't, they want justice, and they want revenge.
I don't argue with people who say, we need to hold on to this. We need to hold on to that. When I'm working with individuals and other people, I'll say, well, tell me your revenge story. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And let people really get into it and just add, I do this and I do that and yada, yada. Let them just have a great time with it. And then at the end, I'll say to them, now tell me, if you acted out that revenge story, would it get you what you really want? And of course, they say no. And then we talk about the mourning and the grieving, which is part of it. That one of the reasons they're so angry is because of what they lost. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, what's underneath the anger, which is usually loss and grief, and sometimes fear. And you begin to work through these emotions. This is all part of the forgiveness process. You've got to go there to be able to get to the other side. And so I have them talk about that and the sadness and the grieving and whatever needs to come up. That's all part of it. And people begin to bond. And, I might even say, just for you to keep in the back of your minds, probably the other group feels very much the same as you. Mm-hmm. That, and to kind of foreshadow that there's bonding here, that this is part of the human experience.
Yes.
Forgiveness is really about your own inner healing. It's not about an outward action towards someone else. It's about your own healing. It's about you letting go your own emotional burdens. It's empowering yourself and helping you learn how to take responsibility for your own stuff. So now you can make different choices. It's about, learning how to work more appropriately with your feelings. And what it's not condoning unkindness. It's not forgetting what happened. It's not letting someone off the hook.
How does humility play a part? And is there anything that can be taught? Like in Japan, they're always bowing to each other. And because it's kind of like it's hard to be humble, right?
I think forgiveness, when you practice it, teaches about humility. So when you are able to say, okay, I'm really angry at so and so. And then I say to myself, what am I accusing them of? Because in a sense, that's what I'm secretly accusing myself of. And I recognize that if I were placed in the same situation as they were, whatever that situation is, I probably wouldn't act much differently. That's how you grow in humility. And then you begin to appreciate the struggles somebody else has gone through. And you thank God you're not going through them. So forgiveness really does help when you go into the deeper layers of it, of humility. Because the bottom line, we're in this together. We're more alike than different. And what I say to people is there are things that are going to happen in our lives that are going to make us angry. It would make anyone angry. And anger is appropriate. It's when you cannot let it go in an appropriate amount of time. So if something happened to you today and you tell your friends about it, yada, yada, tomorrow's a new day and you kind of forget about it, that's appropriate anger. But if you hold on to it and it becomes more and more intense inside of you, and that's when you begin to start thinking out revenge and all of that, you have to step back and say, what am I accusing that person of? Because that's what I'm secretly accusing myself of. But when we are willing to take a look at it, anger is usually telling us that something outside of us needs to change, like we got to get out of Dodge, or something inside of us needs to change. And a lot of times it's more about what's inside of us that needs to change. And that's the message of anger. And when we learn how to work with it, that's part of the healing process, which forgiveness can bring.
I work at KRCT, and we work with survivors of sexual violence. And you can see that with the treatment, with their rehabilitation process, it comes along also the forgiveness. But do they go both in hand, or is there an optimal timing where to start and when to start talking about forgiveness as well?
I think for everybody, it's very different. There's just no one size fits all. One of the interesting things to know, though, is that you're talking also about how do we heal trauma? People have gone through horrific trauma. So the first thing in healing trauma is breaking the silence, telling the story. And in forgiveness work, one of the first things to do is tell the story, and tell the story in a safe place. Tell the story with a trusted other. It's getting out those emotions. It's getting out those feelings. It's getting out the pain, the anger, all of this. And that takes time. So that first step in healing trauma is actually the first step along the continuum of forgiveness. And that's why a lot of times I don't even use the word forgiveness until we're well into a healing, where people all of a sudden realize, oh my God, I've worked through my anger. I've done this, I've done that. And they recognize that, oh my goodness, I've done some healing. And what I'm learning is if I can learn how to let go of this pain and suffering, that's really part of the forgiveness process. And now they're receptive and open to it. Okay. So I hope that, Marta, were you able to hear that? Or did we lose you? Okay. And so people are, when you start doing the healing work of trauma healing, and you respect and honor their stories, and you help them break the silence and get in touch with the feelings. One of the important things in the forgiveness work is you can't skip any steps. And too often people say, oh, I forgive because my church tells me to forgive or to turn my other cheek and all of that. That's not the real healing that forgiveness brings. The real healing is getting into the trenches of our own emotional burdens and talking about it and working with it and being supported by it so we can eventually begin to see it differently. And it's just like I was saying with the Tutsis and the Hutus, when you begin to see why things happened the way they did, you certainly may not like it, but if you understand it, it gives you more power to work with it and it empowers you. So it's parallel. And as you know from your work, everybody has their own time. You can't push anybody. Does that help? Okay, she's on mute, but I got her thumbs up.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Florida. What you said, Eileen, about, with trauma, one of the first things that needs to happen is for them to break the silence. Just very brief story. When we were in Kenya and doing work with traumatized young girls, teenage girls, back in 2016, I think it was, Mary was there and some of the other people on this call were there from Feminenza. And one day, some of the girls, we were like in a huddle and they started to tell their stories, and some of them had never told their story. And I remember one girl, she had said she had scars on her arm from being macheted with a machete knife from sexual physical abuse. And I could feel the power of holding that space to let them tell their story, holding that space with compassion, not saying much. But then at a certain point, I did say to her, you know that you're not your body. You are more than your body, because she said she never wears long sleeve or short sleeve shirts. She always wears long sleeves to cover it because she had shame. And the next day she came with short sleeves and was glowing, simply glowing. So, it's so true. If you don't break that silence, imagine all that you carry from not being able to speak about it in a safe place.
Right.
So I really appreciate that.
There is another story, and I know that all the people on this call are pretty hardy, so I will share it. When I was working in Liberia and giving forgiveness trainings, there was this one woman who always carried a paper bag with her. You always knew something was in there. She never spoke. She sat very quietly. And after about the fourth day of her coming home, bringing this paper bag, I finally asked her, would you want to share what was in the bag? Well, it was skeleton bones of her child. Yeah. And I said to her, can we help you? And she kind of said one or two sentences, and I said, we're here for you, to love you and support you. And she said a few more sentences, and you could see, even probably now, if we looked at each other's faces, we're getting teary-eyed. And then she went on and she finally told the story, which you can all imagine. And we all hugged her, and we were all crying, and we were all telling her how much we loved her. And if she wanted us to do a special ceremony in honor of her daughter, that we would do that for her, and what would it look like? And she just cried, and we asked her to share a little bit more about the things she loved about her, and And we all got together and we created a ceremony. And it was a very difficult, emotional day for everyone. I mean, in Liberia, in this group, there were a lot of people who lost children and loved ones, and people shared that with her and told her how they were able to deal with it, and that they're there for her, and that they will be there for her however she wanted them and needed them. And we cried. The next day, she came in for the first time without the bag. And I was told that from the time her child was killed and she put those bones and whatever in that bag, she took it everywhere. She slept with it. She took it everywhere. So for her to be able to let it go, it was the first time she could smile.
Wow. Wow. It's huge. It says so much.
It's the power of giving people the story
Mhm.
and giving them the space and the love that they need to mourn with.
I see the need for forgiveness. I want to forgive, but I don't know where to start. Where do I start?
By telling your story. By telling your story to people that you trust, one or two other people, and really saying what it is you're so angry about and what is it that you really want to forgive. I hear funny things afterwards, when people tell their stories and I say, what are you so angry about? Then they can tell me, and I would say, what do you feel that you need to let go of, that you want to forgive? Sometimes telling the story, they said, I don't know if I'm even now angry anymore.
Right.
I mean, those things even happen. But for those that are really, feeling really angry about it, I start working with the anger. And you heard me say a little while ago, anger serves a purpose. It's like a red flag saying something either outside of us needs to change or something inside of us needs to heal. And so we start working with anger. And, I always say, if you can't let go of anger, then ask the question, what am I accusing that other person of? That person may be abusive to you, and you would say, I would never do those things. But you might be abusive in another way, even to yourself, and not realize it. And sometimes just asking the question without even knowing the answer helps. Because you can say, well, something, I'm sure something like that's happened, and I've got to forgive myself for doing that. And there you go. You're beginning to release something inside of yourself. Because remember, forgiveness is about your own inner healing. And when that healing is accomplished, there's a peace that you feel. Because that's what forgiveness brings. And for all of you that are working so diligently in this, I see different layers, levels of forgiveness. I always tell people right off the bat, if for nothing else, to forgive someone is very pragmatic. You're letting go your emotional burden. And so for a lot of people who say, I don't want to forgive, yada, yada, yada. Well, do you want to let go of that anger? Or do you want to become a bitter person? I don't want to become a bitter person. All right, so let's just work on letting go of your anger. That's all you need to do. Very pragmatic. Let go of that grievance, that anger. Learn how to change the channel. I do a lot with changing the channels, of going into the beauty channel or going into the love channel. I've even got a pet channel because I'm crazy about my animals. It just brings up all of those feelings. That's why when Eileen, you went to feed your cat, man, I was right there with you. You feel the joy. Feel the joy. Get into that space. That's pragmatic. For all of you who've been really working with it, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, where you begin to feel the connection of, yes, I'm not so different than that other person, given those circumstances. And you begin to feel the human connection and that interconnectionness. And then you get a little bit deeper to recognize, that's all our ego stuff going on, and we're all egos. But deeper in that person is their true spiritual essence. And I can relate to that too. And there's a spiritual shift that takes place that can be really profound. And in my book, you know, when I write about the story of Iran War, the French woman who lived in France growing up as a child in World War I and was part of the resistance in World War II and went through a lot of suffering. At the end of the war, she was invited to go to Coast Switzerland. And she said yes, not realizing that there were going to be 160 Germans present. There she was with them. And every time a German would speak, the French would walk out. She walked out, and the Lutheran minister, Frank Buchman, posed a question. How do you see a united Europe without Germany? And she went to her room for 2.5 days and was very justified in holding on to her anger. And then she realized that it was holding on to that anger in her heart, which was the reason why wars began in the first place.
Wow.
And so she went out and she went to lunch, and the conference, it was like, you know, community, family style. She sat down, and of course, a German woman sat next to her. And there was dead silence. And finally, she started to talk to that woman, and she told this woman all the reasons why she hated Germans. Can you imagine sitting there, and all of a sudden this woman goes on the rampage of why she hated her and all the Germans and what went on. And then she finally said to the German woman, I'm telling you all of this because I want to be freed of my anger. She told her story. And then the German woman said, it's my turn. And she began to tell her story. And her story included the fact that her husband was one of the men responsible for the plot to kill Hitler. She said the plot failed, he was arrested, and he was hung. And then they came for me. They took my children away and put them in orphanages under assumed names. I've since then got them back. I know we didn't resist early enough. We didn't resist strong enough. We didn't resist in a way that would help the world. And for that, I want to say, I'm sorry. When Iran went to speak to the conference, she shared all the stuff that had happened. And at the end, a German woman got up and walked on the stage. And she wanted to shake Iran's hand. She thanked her for what she heard. Iran couldn't do it, and she prayed to herself. And all of a sudden, she felt this wellspring. And this miracle happened, and she was able to extend her hand. The miracle was that something inside of her changed, where she could deeply forgive the German people. And she spent the rest of her life committed to helping build especially the morale of the German women and speaking to all their different governments about the importance and power of forgiveness. And she did that to the last day she lived. That is an inner transformation that took place within her where she had no need of outer instruction. That's a real spiritual transformation. And we can all experience it, but it takes that work. But that's the power of forgiveness. And it was actually when I first heard that story, probably in 1985, along with other things going on in my life, that made me feel that I wanted to be committed to this work. Because if she can do it, all of us can do it.
I can see in your response the importance of embracing the whole of oneself, in not trying to jump too fast to, I need to forgive, but to not
Right.
to not suppress what's there, but to look at put everything on the table, what's actually there, and then deal with it.
That's right. You can't skip any steps. And, I spent 2.5 days going through, and, it's in the book if you have it, the story. So I won't go into all of it. But she went into all the reasons why she hated the Germans. And she had to, in order for her to finally get to the place. It's like the revenge story. Like I said, just go into your revenge story and then ask yourself, does this get you what you want? She went through all the reasons she was angry and hatred and how she was going to hold on to that. And she asked the question, will this really get you what you want? The answer was clearly no. And only then could she begin to entertain the thought of something else. That's the little willingness that opens the door to forgiveness.
People say hope is an illusion, and there is no way that I will give room for that in me, because without hope, I think everything will be so bleak and impossible.
There is such a kind of leaning toward authoritarianism these days. And it's full-blown in this country. And what do authoritarian leaders want to do? Divide, conquer, make us, them, make you feel despair, which is the opposite of hope. And if you feel enough despair, it stresses out the brain. And I won't go into the neuropsychology, but you all know I'm a psychologist, so I'm thinking about these things. There's a lot of stress that happens within our brains. And after a while, we can't handle it. And if we recognize the power of hope, it begins to shift our energy to coming back together. We're coming back together, bringing people together, creating that really unity through hope. So when people say, well, hope is an illusion, no, hope generates certain kinds of actions that bring us back together. And that's what the hope is about. So it's very powerful. And when you think about our work in forgiveness, when we walk into communities and we help people and we give them, tools and ways of being that help let go of their emotional burden, we're giving them hope.
So let's say someone really insults you to the core, right? So how does that play out in you? Give us a little sense of the trace of your journey to get to the forgiveness.
Well, I first think, do I need to set up a boundary to protect myself? That's actually what I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if somebody's insulting me, and that's verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a really important question, because I don't jump to forgiving them right away.
Right.
You see, it's like, okay, what's going on here? What do I need to do? And this goes on to, all right, I'm getting angry. What's my anger telling me? Is there something that needs to change outside of me or something inside of me? So right now, I'm not going to deal with the verbal abuse. Once I remove myself from the situation, I could, say, well, whatever that inner dialogue is, to try to understand where they're coming from. And that's how, to get a different understanding. But it doesn't mean that I have to, as you all know, reconcile with this person or do anything more.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really important to also know that you got to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they insult me and they're really angry, and I come to the realization that something has really happened to them, that's really upsetting them, and they're taking it out on me, which happens, and that's not what they usually mean to do, then we can talk about it, and I certainly can forgive them and continue our relationship. So here again, it's not one size fits all, but it is being true to yourself, to ask yourself, okay, what's going on? And the first thing sometimes is, do I need to protect myself? Do I need to set a healthy boundary? Because the other side of it is, if you attack me, it's like like a little kid having a scissor. And I want to take that scissor away so you don't hurt yourself anymore or me. And by setting that boundary, by saying stop, you stop hurting yourself too, because there's a part of you that knows you've also attacked me. And when that happens, even if we're not aware of it, we're feeling some guilt. And guilt justifies punishment. And so you're getting this attack, defend, and this guilt cycle going on. And the most loving thing we can do is to help people and help build up any more guilt, to let that go. You know, people think it's love that makes the world go round. If you want to get someone to do something, it's guilt. Usually makes us feel so bad is guilt.
Yes.
So if I can stop you from piling on any more guilt, and which means not hurting me, that's a very loving thing I'm doing for you.
Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes, I think that guilt is a very corrosive thing for sure.
It's very hard for us to get in touch with. Nobody wants to feel that pit in their stomach.
Yeah. And also within what you're saying, Eileen, you know, with a boundary. So obviously, if, say, a woman's being abused, she doesn't first go to forgiveness. She first gets herself in a safe place.
Thank you for joining us in listening to Political Forgiveness Voices of Peace, where I hope you found the stories of forgiveness inspiring. If you know of anyone who would benefit from listening to this podcast, please share it. For more information on political forgiveness, go to my website, drborris.com, where you can find the latest information on political forgiveness and sign up for the newsletter. We have some exciting changes happening this March. In season 2, I'm going to have a co-host, Dr. Fred Luskin, who is the director of the Stanford University Forgiveness Projects. He is also the author of some best-selling books, Forgive for Good and Forgive for Love. Our name is also changing to Voices of Peace, Personal Forgiveness, and its focus is on personal forgiveness in our daily lives. Our first guest is Lyndon Harris. Lyndon was an Episcopal priest in New York City when, after 9/11, his life fell apart. He dealt with PTSD, losing his job, personal injustices, going through a divorce, and finally losing his home. And yet he had to hit rock bottom before he could even consider forgiveness. But when he did, amazing things happened in his life. So please join us for season 2. And remember to like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.